Liu Wei was running down that dark hallway of the spaceship. He was running down between all the identical doors of the other 220 passengers on the spaceship. That low purple light surrounded him. He was huffing, breathing in the thin air, and he heard that voice coming down the hallway right behind him. Get back here, Liu Wei! You're a dead man! You're a dead man, Liu Wei! Get back here, you bastard! It was Adrian. Adrian running after him with a knife in his hands. Liu Wei had the wound in his arm. It was dripping blood, dripping that crimson trail down the carpet of the hallway. And meanwhile, everyone else, all 220 passengers of the ship, they were all sleeping soundly in their pods in each of their rooms under those alpha waves coming over them. And he could hear the curses and the shouting of Adrian behind him. He was huffing and gasping at this air. The ship, every night, the ship re-diverted all of the oxygen into the sleeping pods of all the passengers, so the hallways had minimal oxygen levels. The way he was thinking about a school trip when he was a child, a trip they had taken out to the Kunlun Mountains in a distant province of his homeland. He was thinking back to that because on that trip too, he remembered how thin that air was, but just like the ship's air, how clean it was. Of course, that was back when you could still breathe any of the air on Earth. Get back here, Liu Wei! I'm gonna kill you! Adrian's chasing after him with a knife. Liu Wei, he ran with all the strength that he had. Where are you going, Liu Wei? And then he heard a different voice in his ear ask the same question. Where are you going, Liu Wei? It was the voice of Chippy. He gave his consent to the artificial intelligence implant months ago before this ship ever took off from Earth. Like all the other 220 passengers, he gave consent to be connected to Chippy, and that's how they affectionately referred to him. And Chippy, he would chime in every now and then. And the way he tried to answer Chippy, I running down this hallway. I need to get to the storeroom. I need to get to the stock room. If I can get there, I'm safe. There's enough, all the rations in there for the 9 year journey. He knew he'd be able to hide there indefinitely. Adrian would never be able to find him. All those stacks and stacks of boxes of food and rations for their 9 year journey. He could hide there and he wouldn't die of hunger in there either. He could wait there until Adrian had calmed down, however long that took, but he needed to get there first. Excellent job, Liu Wei, the voice kept talking in his ear. Chippy, excellent job, Liu Wei. Heart rate, 180 beats per minute. It's great to see the passengers doing exercise on this journey. Liu Wei, we cannot afford 9 years of laziness. Liu Wei panted back. Yeah, if I can keep Adrian from killing me, I think this counts for a whole week of exercise, Chippy. And he rushed down. Finally, he got to the end of the hallway. He could hear Adrian's footsteps behind him. He could hear those curses coming at him, but he found the hatch and he ducked down into the hatch and went down into the bowels of the ship. Now, down there, it was so different from the decks that all the passengers rode on, the lounges, the dining room. Down here in the bowels, it reminded him of an ancient film that he saw. He loved ancient cinema, ancient literature. He loved what they used to call science fiction. He loved looking back on the way that ancient humans imagined things like space travel, things like artificial intelligence even. He walked down the walkway, the catwalk down on that underneath area of the ship, the bowels of this spaceship. It reminded him of a film he had seen of one of those underwater vessels back when the oceans had not started to boil yet on Earth, when vessels still traveled underwater in those oceans. So he walked through ejections of steam coming in his face every now and then, walking down this metallic catwalk, and all around pipes and valves everywhere in this underbelly of the ship. He just needed to remember which direction he had to run in to get to that stockroom, and then he'd be safe. He could hide in that food stockroom. Then he heard Adrian's feet pound on that metal walkway behind him, come running after him. And he ran as fast as he could. Get back here, Liu Wei! He tried to explain himself with the little air he had in his lungs. Adrian, I didn't mean to. What I did, it was an accident. I didn't mean it. And he chuckled to himself, thinking of another ancient film. He remembered one from centuries ago where astronauts were on a ship with Central Intelligence, and the intelligence was hostile. He thought, well, if I were in one of those quaint little naive movies, Chippy would be the one trying to kill me right now. But no, it's not Chippy who's trying to kill me. It's Adrian, and all because Adrian thinks I'm not perfect for some reason. The whole reason that all of them were chosen for this journey was because they were perfect in every way. That was how it worked. There was only room on this colonizing ship for 220 humans, and that was the sole factor: DNA. DNA testing, barrages, months and months of DNA testing for all 220 passengers from all over the globe. Now, of course, the other 12 million people on Earth erupted in protests and civil wars when they found out about this mission. Why them? Why not me? Why is that the criteria? But couldn't there be better criteria for humans to settle a new planet than just their DNA? I mean, they haven't even been trained. How dare they? There were protests, there were marches, there were riots everywhere. Liu Wei, he remembered, he understood, of course. Nobody likes to be left behind. But I mean, what good would it do those people anyway? For for us 220 people to stay on Earth with them and watch the Earth burn, watch the oceans boil, and breathe that toxic air and die with the rest of them, well, that's not doing anyone any favors. He understood, but it had to be done. This was humanity's last hope. Now, the plan for those 220 perfect humans was to travel two years out into the wormhole that had suddenly appeared in our own solar system. And as luck would have it, they detected the exit of that wormhole out in the galaxy of Proxima Centauri b. And the exit was so close to an inhabitable planet, very close to Aletheia. All they needed to do was take that 9-year journey and they would start a new human civilization, those 220 genetically perfect people. But there was one person who didn't think Liu Wei was perfect, and that was his roommate, Adrian. Adrian was tall and tan and blonde, and sure, he was always cordial to Liu Wei when they met each other in their sleeping pod or in the dining hall or in the lounge. But he was always doing these little passive aggressive jabs at Liu Wei. He would turn the light off when Liu Wei was in the WC, using the WC of their pod. Or he would mess with the controls on Liu Wei's sleeping pod. He would change the temperature controls. So some days Liu Wei, he would wake up sweating bullets. Other nights he would wake up freezing and trembling. And after 2 weeks of this, he had enough. He didn't know why Adrian didn't like him. Maybe Adrian was one of those people who still clung to this ancient primitive idea of human races. Maybe Adrian wished he was in a pod with somebody who looked like him. I don't know. But Liu Wei had enough. And so this night, Liu Wei decided to get revenge. He would teach Adrian, you don't mess with your pod mate. And so that night when Adrian had gone in and the alpha waves did their work and Adrian had started snoring in his own pod, Liu Wei went over and he decided he would take the temperature down to just 3 degrees Celsius. Adrian would wake up trembling and he would learn his lesson. Except there's one thing, Liu Wei, he hit the wrong button. He hit the oxygen button. He took that oxygen down to near mortal levels. Well, he didn't realize what he'd done. He went into his own pod, he went to sleep. Adrian woke up gasping, infuriated, and raged. And wherever he had a knife stashed, he took that knife. He had opened Liu Wei's pod and he had stabbed him in the arm. And now here he was, chasing Liu Wei down the bowels of this ship. Liu Wei, he gasped. He ran down that metallic catwalk, these soft red lights all around him with Adrian right behind him. He ran just as with all the strength that he had, but finally he saw a ladder up ahead. He ran as fast as he could. He jumped, he grabbed onto that ladder, pulled himself up, felt Adrian's hand grasping his ankle, but he got away. He pulled up, he said, I hope this is the right part of the ship. He came out, yes, it was the kitchen. He made it to the kitchen. He looked for that conveyor belt that brought the food in from the stock room, and he crawled down that conveyor belt, down into that dark tunnel, and he crawled. He could hear Adrian coming after him, but he crawled down that tunnel to the end. In the end, he saw this green square of light, the exit. He crawled toward that green square of light, exited, came out into that big stock room, and the tunnel, the door shut behind him. He leaned against it. He was safe. He could hear Adrian pounding against that hatch behind him. Open up, Liu Wei, open up! He could hear him pounding, banging on it with his knife. He just sat there and took a breath and then looked around the stock room. Something was wrong. No, he saw right next to the exit of the tunnel, he saw a stack of boxes of provisions of food, but I mean, there was only enough food for a couple of weeks for all the passengers. Everywhere else in this big, vast stock room, there was no food. It was just rows and rows and rows of machines, of tanks filled with green liquid bubbling, strange machines with hoses going into them. The way he looked, he said, What is this place? It is the future of humanity, Liu Wei. It was the first time Chippy ever answered him directly like that. Chippy, you can hear me, Chippy? What? Where am I, Chippy? Where's all the food? This is all the food that is needed, Liu Wei. What are you talking about, Chippy? This is enough food for a couple weeks, maybe. This is not enough food for 9 years. The journey will not last 9 years, Liu Wei. The journey will last 92,000 years. What? Chippy, I don't understand. None of you will survive the journey, Liu Wei. No one would have volunteered for a suicide mission. We need only your genetic material. What? 92,000 years? What about the wormhole? There is no wormhole, Liu Wei. Now, Liu Wei, he heard that pounding against the hatch behind him. And as he heard Chippy's words in his ear, he turned around and he said, Adrian, open the hatch. Let me get up there. Let me get in. Adrian, I need to come back. And he could hear Adrian's, what are you playing at, Liu Wei? Adrian's confused behind him. Liu Wei, I told you I'm going to kill you. Yes, okay, stab me, do whatever you want. Just let me through the hatch. Let me out of here. He started to panic. There's nowhere you can go, Liu Wei. He looked at his feet and he saw the gas coming in, the translucent gas filling up the chamber that he was standing in, that transparent chamber inside the stockroom, and all those glowing green machines in front of him. Chippy, what are you doing? He found it harder and harder to breathe. What are you doing, Chippy? Liu Wei, we need an experiment. We need a body to calibrate the machines. Machines? What are these machines for? In 92,000 years, Liu Wei, the genetic material will be used to create enough embryos. The nursery chamber will raise the humans, making them into fit colonists 92,000 years from now. What? You're going to use my body? You're going to cannibalize me? But why couldn't you just couldn't we just reproduce here on the ship and then our children's children? Liu Wei, no human civilization has ever lasted close to 92,000 years. That is how long the journey will take. Now he was starting to lose his breath, and as he slouched down against the hatch and fell to the ground, and as he slouched and started to lose consciousness, he heard a few phrases of Chippy's voice in his ear, talking about multiple planets, millions of embryos, talking about optimizing chances for human survival on another planet. All he knew was that he would never see it, and Adrian would never see it. And as he slouched against that hatch and felt it banging and felt Adrian pounding against it, he realized that there was no more pursuer and pursuee. There was no more victim and aggressor. There was none of that. And he understood that pretty soon he and Adrian and the other 220 passengers would all be mixed into the same genetic miasma that would not be revived for another 92,000 years.